When I transmigrated here, the story was nearing its end. The female lead, after enduring numerous hardships, became a film queen and finally ended up with the domineering CEO male lead. Meanwhile, the malicious supporting female character failed in her schemes against the female lead, reaped what she sowed, lost her innocence, and even got pregnant. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. I am that malicious supporting female character. When I realized I was pregnant, the baby was already 4 months along. I stood under the dim yellow light in the cramped bathroom, my fingers trembling as they traced the slight swell of my abdomen. The woman in the mirror looked haggard, with dark circles under her eyes and dry, pale lips. It was my 3rd day in this world after crossing over. In my original world, I was an orphan who never experienced the warmth of a family. Now, not only have I transmigrated into the role of a villainess in a novel, but I've also joyfully acquired a 4-month pregnancy. According to the fragmented memories, the original host, Sun Wan, repeatedly framed her stepsister, the female lead, Su Qing, and ultimately reaped what she sowed. She lost her virginity to a stranger in a trap she designed herself, was exposed by the media, and had her reputation ruined. Ding, the phone suddenly rang with a bank notification message. I clicked to check, and the account balance showed 10,327.68 yuan. This was all the savings the original owner had. After the scandal broke, her father, the chairman of the Su Group, publicly declared he was severing their father-daughter relationship, shifting all his affection to his stepdaughter, Su Qing. With heavy steps, I walked to the window and drew back the curtains. Outside the window, the city's dazzling nightscape unfolds. With towering buildings brightly lit and streams of traffic flowing endlessly, this should have been a scene of enviable prosperity, yet at this moment, it only makes me feel suffocated. The cost of living here is exorbitant, and the original owner's body still needs rest and recovery, making it impossible to work. I can't stay here any longer. I've already made up my mind. 3 days later, with simple luggage in tow, I boarded a southbound train. Outside the window, the scenery gradually shifted from concrete and steel to lush green fields. My chosen destination was a place called Qingshan Village, a place with low living costs, beautiful scenery, and most importantly, far removed from the world of the male and female protagonists. Young lady, we've arrived at Qingshan Village. The driver's voice brought me back to reality. I stepped off the train with my luggage, greeted by air fragrant with the scent of grass and earth. In the distance were rolling green hills, while nearby stood scattered farmhouses, occasionally punctuated by the sound of barking dogs and children's laughter. Following the information I had received earlier, I found the courtyard I was to rent. The landlord, a man in his 60s surnamed Li, had deep wrinkles etched on his face but a kind look in his eyes. This is the place, 500 a month, 1 month's rent as deposit. Old man Li pushed open the peeling wooden door. A bit old, but sturdy, the courtyard was larger than I had imagined, with a lush osmanthus tree at its center and a few worn-out rattan chairs scattered beneath it. The main house consisted of 2 single-story rooms. The walls showed some peeling, but the overall structure was intact. What surprised me most was the abandoned vegetable plot on one side of the yard. Though overgrown with weeds, the soil looked quite fertile. Let's settle here, I immediately decided. Counting out 1,000 yuan from my bag to hand to Old Man Li, after signing a simple contract, Old Man Li pointed to the west before leaving. The Zhang family lives over there. They're good people, you can turn to them if you need anything. Packing up my belongings took me a whole day. At dusk, as I was squatting in the vegetable garden pulling weeds, I suddenly heard a gentle woman's voice outside the courtyard gate. Miss, are you new here? I looked up to see a woman in her 50s. With a round face and neatly tied back hair, holding a bamboo basket covered with a cloth. Yes, hello, auntie. I quickly stood up, brushing the dirt off my hands. I'm from the Zhang family to the west. You can call me Aunt Zhang, the woman said with a smile as she approached. You look like you're working hard all by yourself, so I brought you some dinner. I was taken aback, not expecting someone to be so warm-hearted. Aunt Zhang had already lifted the cloth covering the bamboo basket, revealing 2 steaming dishes inside, a bowl of braised pork and a bowl of stir-fried seasonal vegetables, along with a few white steamed buns. Thank you so much. My nose tingled, and I nearly burst into tears. Since crossing over, this was the first time someone had shown me kindness. Aunt Zhang waved her hand. No need for formalities between neighbors. "Do you live alone?" I instinctively touched my already showing belly and hesitated for a moment. "Yes, alone." Aunt Zhang's gaze fell on my abdomen, a flicker of understanding flashing in her eyes, but without any trace of disdain or curiosity. She simply said gently, "Pregnant women need to eat well. If you ever need any help, don't hesitate to ask." At that moment, the tension that had gripped me for days suddenly eased, and tears welled up uncontrollably. Aunt Zhang panicked and quickly put down the basket, gently patting my back like a mother. "It's all right, child, it's all right." I bought some things to decorate the house, and with Aunt Zhang's help, my small courtyard gradually came to life. I used part of the remaining money to buy some basic necessities and vegetable seeds. Uncle Zhang helped me fix the leaky roof and the creaking front door. Under Aunt Zhang's guidance, I learned to distinguish various vegetable seeds and understood what to plant in each season, though I often ended up with muddy hands and an aching back. Watching the once barren vegetable patch gradually become neat and tender green sprouts emerge from the soil filled me with an unprecedented sense of accomplishment. One evening, as I was setting up supports for the tomato seedlings, I suddenly felt a slight movement in my belly, like a small fish gently flicking its tail. I froze in place, my hand involuntarily touching my abdomen. "What's wrong?" Aunt Zhang was picking beans nearby when she noticed my unusual behavior. "He seems to have moved." My voice trembled. Aunt Zhang smiled. "That's the baby kicking, saying hello to you." At that moment, a strange feeling welled up in my heart. This tiny life, connected to me by blood, would become my true family in this unfamiliar world. I secretly resolved that no matter how difficult it might be, I would give the child a warm home. The days flowed by quietly like a stream. The air in Qingshan village was crisp, carrying the fragrance of earth and vegetation, and my complexion improved day by day. In the early morning, I sat on the rattan chair beneath the osmanthus tree, with sunlight filtering through the leaves and dappling the embroidery frame. The original owner's hands were fair and slender, with distinct knuckles and nails glowing a healthy pink, resembling fine mutton fat jade in the morning light. I gently stroked the back of my hand, feeling a fleeting sense of wonder at fate's whimsy. Both the original owner and I were named Sunwan, looked exactly alike, yet our life paths were entirely different. I grew up in an orphanage and was sent to learn embroidery at the age of 10. I remember back then, to master a single stitching technique, I often stayed up late into the night, my fingers pricked full of blood spots. Later, my works gradually became valuable enough to sell, but my wrists developed chronic pain that aches sharply on rainy days. "This time, I must take good care of these hands," I murmured to myself, threading the needle. On the embroidery frame, a spring mountain painting gradually took shape. Among the verdant mountain ranges, a few peach blossoms dotted the scenery, with a yellow oriole perched on a branch, so lifelike it seemed real. This is a new style I designed by combining traditional Sioux embroidery with modern aesthetics, featuring fine and even stitches with natural color transitions. Muan. Embroidering again, Aunt Zhang pushed open the courtyard gate with a vegetable basket in hand, walking over with a warm smile. "Since finding out about my pregnancy and that I'm on my own, she's been taking care of me like a daughter." "Yeah, I want to embroider a few more pieces to sell online," I said with a smile. Looking up, Aunt Zhang leaned in for a closer look and exclaimed, "This bird looks as if it's alive. With skills like yours, you could definitely fetch a high price in the city." I shook my head. "The competition online is fierce. I'm just starting out, so each piece only sells for 200 or 300. As I spoke, I rubbed the back of my stiff neck. My 7-month pregnant belly was getting heavier, and sitting for too long made my back ache unbearably. "Oh dear, stop embroidering already." Aunt Zhang quickly pressed down on my hand. "You're about to give birth, you need more rest. I've made you some chicken soup, drink it while it's hot." The aroma of chicken soup wafted from the thermal container. From childhood till now, it was the first time someone had specially made soup for me. In the blink of an eye, the day of delivery arrived. The delivery room in the county hospital was simple yet clean. The labor pains came suddenly and intensely. I clutched the sheets tightly, my back drenched in cold sweat. In my dazed state, I seemed to see the original owner standing by the bed, dressed in an elegant gown with flawless makeup, yet her eyes were as hollow as an empty shell. "I'll live well in your place," I whispered in my heart. A relieved smile flickered at the corners of her lips as her figure gradually dissolved into the glaring lights of the delivery room. "Wah!" A loud cry pierced the night sky. The nurse placed the red-faced little bundle against my chest. It's a healthy boy. 6 pounds and 8 ounces. With trembling fingers, I touched his wrinkled little face. He suddenly stopped crying and grasped my hand, as if giving me immense strength in that intangible moment. Let's call you Su Yuan, I whispered softly, with the nickname Inan. Then that means peace. Upon hearing the news, Aunt Zheng stayed up all night to prepare millet congee and brought it to the hospital. She held Inan in her arms, unable to put him down. This child is truly handsome, with eyes and brows just like yours. He's sure to grow into a dashing young man. I watch Inan blinking her eyes as she explores the world. His features might resemble his father's, but I have no idea who that man is. I don't care either. What's past is past. During my postpartum confinement, Aunt Zhang came to visit me almost every day. She taught me how to bathe a newborn and change diapers, and even brought over the cradle her son had used from home. Inan was exceptionally well behaved. When hungry, she would whimper a little. And once fed, she would open her round, bright eyes to look around. She rarely cried at night. This child is here to repay kindness, Aunt Zhang often said. But as Inan grew day by day, the expenses also grew larger and larger. Baby formula, diapers, clothes. My savings were quickly running out. I had no choice but to pick up the embroidery hoop again, but the sporadic orders alone couldn't sustain a living. One night, while scrolling through my phone, I came across a live stream by an embroidery blogger. She only filmed close-ups of her hands, yet her live stream had tens of thousands of viewers. Maybe I can give it a try too. Once this thought arose, it became impossible to suppress. The next day, I set up my phone stand, adjusted the angle carefully to ensure only the embroidery hoop and my hands were in the frame. During my first live stream, I was so nervous that my palms were sweating, and my stitches were noticeably messier than usual. The number of viewers in the live stream hovered in the single digits, but I still answered every question earnestly. The host's hands are so beautiful. How do you embroider with this stitch? Can custom embroidery be ordered? Gradually, the live stream gained a steady audience. People started placing custom orders, and although the prices weren't high, it at least provided an additional source of income. During the day, I took care of Inan, embroidering while he slept, and in the evening, I did a 2-hour live stream. It was tiring, but seeing Inan's rosy sleeping face made it all worthwhile. Before I knew it, Inan was already 5 months old. The little one is growing increasingly fair and adorable, with chubby cheeks like a peeled hard-boiled egg, and big, black grape-like eyes always curiously observing the surroundings. That evening, as usual, I set up my phone to start the live stream, and Inan sat on the small blanket I specially prepared for him. His chubby little hands earnestly playing with a colorful bead toy. He focused intently on trying to push the beads from one side to the other, his tiny brows slightly furrowed, and his pink lips pressed into a straight line. Utterly adorable. Mommy needs to start working now. Can Inan play by himself for a while? I gently ruffled his soft hair, and Inan looked up at me with a wide grin, revealing 2 tiny baby teeth that had just started to show. Then lowered his head to continue battling with his toys. I adjusted the embroidery hoop and was about to start today's live streaming session when I suddenly noticed the camera angle was slightly off. As I reached out to adjust it, I accidentally shifted the lens to the side, unexpectedly capturing Anne's chubby little back and his light blue onesie on the screen. The live stream instantly exploded with excitement. Ah, who's that little figure in the background? Oh my god, so tiny. Does the streamer have a baby at home? That little tuft of hair is just too adorable. The barrage of comments flew by like snowflakes, and only then did I realize what was happening. I quickly explained, "Oh, sorry about that, that's my son Inan. He accidentally got caught in the shot." Little did I know, this explanation only made the comments go even wilder. Show us his face. How old is the little one? What's he playing that has him so focused? Even the back view is adorable. The front must be absolutely heart-melting. I watched the sudden surge in online viewers, feeling completely at a loss. Inan seemed to notice my gaze and turned to look at me with confusion, her long eyelashes fluttering. Sorry everyone, to protect the child's privacy, I can't show her face, I gently declined, but seeing the disappointed comments flooding the screen, I added, "But I can show you Inan playing with toys from behind." I adjusted the camera slightly to make sure Inan's back was fully captured in the corner of the frame. At that moment, she was trying hard to fit a round block into a square hole, her chubby little hands clumsily turning it around. When she realized it wouldn't fit, She even let out a serious little sigh, which made the live stream audience burst into laughter. Oh my God, so heartwarming, the bewildering antics of human toddlers. So adorable when they're being serious, the host is so skilled, and the baby is so well behaved. To my surprise, Annen's appearance caused the live stream's popularity to skyrocket. The viewership, which had been stable at around 1 to 2,000, surpassed 30,000 in just half an hour. The chat was flooded with comments like granny smiles and cloud baby adoration, and some even started sending gifts, asking the little one to perform again. When I ended the stream, I was shocked to find that this single session had gained 20,000 new followers. You should know that I worked hard for several months of live streaming just to accumulate 10,000 followers, yet, just by showing his back, Annen brought double the growth. After ending the live stream, I picked up Annen, who was still engrossed in studying his toy, and kissed his soft little cheeks over and over. My little lucky star. I nuzzled his tiny nose and couldn't help but exclaim, "How are you so adorable?" Annen was a bit stunned by my sudden affection but soon started giggling, her tiny hands grabbing at my hair while making ah-woo sounds, as if responding to my praise. That night, after putting Annen to sleep, I lay in bed scrolling through the comments in the live stream. Besides compliments about how adorable Annen was, many people also asked if they could order custom embroidery pieces with mother-child themes. My heart pounded with excitement. This could be the opportunity that changes our lives as mother and child. At the same time, I began thinking about how to cleverly incorporate Annen's adorable elements into my embroidery works without revealing his face. In the following days, I experimented with adding some childlike elements to traditional embroidery, chubby little handprints, round animal shapes, and endearing baby silhouettes. These new creations became hugely popular in the live streams, with a noticeable increase in orders. What surprised me even more was that a brand wanted to collaborate with me on a series of parent-child embroidery products, with an advance payment of 20,000 yuan. This would cover living expenses for Annen and me for over half a year. On the day of signing the contract, I carried Annen and spun around the courtyard several times, as excited as a child. "Annen, we're going to live a good life." I lifted him high, and he happily waved his little hands, the sunlight casting a golden glow around us. Aunt Zhang hurried over upon hearing the news and repeatedly congratulated us upon learning the good news. "I always said Annen is a little lucky star. Ever since he came, life for you too has been getting better and better." Yes, I looked down at the little life in my arms who depended on and trusted me unconditionally, my heart filled with gratitude. He is not only my child but also the sunshine that brightens my new life. In the days that followed, I carefully shared glimpses of Annen's daily life from behind on the internet. He squatted by the vegetable garden in his bear onesie, watching ants move. His chubby little hands clutched crayons as he doodled on paper. When he wobbled while learning to walk, he looked like a clumsy little penguin. These snippets unexpectedly gained popularity, and the number of fans grew like a snowball. The cloud parenting fans gave Annen a nickname, Back View Killer. Every live stream was filled with comments begging for more back view kills. Embroidery orders and collaboration invitations kept pouring in, and for the first time, my savings surpassed 6 figures. I began consciously filtering orders. I turned down all those low-priced, mass-produced requests, accepting only high-end custom pieces that demanded exquisite craftsmanship. For a round fan featuring the 100 Children at Play design, I employed a total of 48 stitching techniques to vividly embroider the scene of 100 children frolicking. The customer was so excited after receiving it that they made a video call, saying it was practically a work of art. The live stream gradually attracted quite a few professionals. One day, a viewer with the ID Jiangnan embroideress sent 3 consecutive bullet comments. "This stitching technique is the long-lost adding flowers to brocade. Where did the streamer learn this craft? This skill requires at least 20 years of mastery." I smiled faintly at the camera, my fingers dancing swiftly as a peony gradually bloomed on the silk canvas. The petals overlapped layer upon layer, with the outermost threads shimmering like pearls in the sunlight. After all, before transmigrating into the book, with my talent and over a decade of diligent practice, I had become one of the top embroiderers in the entire embroidery workshop. I had participated in many competitions and was my master's favorite candidate to be the next head embroiderer. After that, more and more collaborations came knocking, but I politely declined most of them. Right now, the most important thing is Annen. I adjusted my schedule, 6 hours of fixed daily live streaming, with all the remaining time reserved for the little one. In the morning, I took him to recognize the vegetables in the garden. In the afternoon, I taught him to babble his first words. In the evening, I held him under the osmanthus tree to gaze at the stars. The idle gossip in the village had somehow faded away without notice. In its place were the fresh eggs from Aunt Lee, the seasonal fruits from Uncle Wang, and the cheerful laughter of neighbor children who came to play with Anan. The two of us became the most beloved duo in Qingshan village. That evening, I took Anan for a walk in the village, pushing the stroller. Anan babbled and pointed at the wildflowers by the roadside. Turning a corner, I noticed the gate of a house that was usually tightly shut was unexpectedly wide open. Strange. I slowed my pace. Aunt Zheng had mentioned that a reclusive old woman with a peculiar temper lived here, who hadn't stepped out in 4 or 5 years, nor had any relatives ever visited. Driven by curiosity, I glanced into the yard. A silver-haired elderly woman lay face down in the courtyard, a toppled bucket soaking half of her clothes. Be good, Anan. Wait for mommy here. I locked the stroller's brakes and dashed inside in a flash. The old woman's face was ashen, her breathing faint. I dialed 120 while checking her vital signs using the first aid methods I had learned. As the ambulance siren grew louder, the old woman suddenly opened her eyes. Mind your own business. She glared at me weakly. Only after the doctor confirmed she was out of danger at the hospital did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. I left Anan in Aunt Zhang's care, then made some soup and bought daily necessities to deliver to the elderly woman. In the hospital room, the old woman sat propped against the headboard, her silver hair tied into a meticulously neat bun. At the sound of footsteps, her sharp gaze shot over like a knife. It's you, she sneered. Aren't you afraid I'll latch onto you? Placing the thermal container on the bedside table, I smiled and said, if I didn't help someone in need, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. With that, I handed her a bowl of the prepared chicken soup. The old woman froze for a moment, her hands trembling slightly as she took the bowl. She lowered her head to take a sip, and suddenly her eyes turned red. The soup is delicious, she said hoarsely. Thank you. For the next few days, I brought meals to Grandma Ruan in various styles. Sometimes it was clear braised chicken soup, sometimes shrimp wontons, and once I specially made the pumpkin porridge that Anan loves the most. Grandma Ruan, are you feeling better today? I pushed open the hospital room door, holding Anan in my arms as she gnawed on a teething biscuit. Ruan Qinghe, this was the full name the elderly woman told me, a particularly poetic name. Humph, not dead yet. She didn't look up, but the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. And what's this little thing? Anan saw Grandma Ruan and immediately started waving his little hands excitedly, making ah sounds, cookie crumbs scattering all over his clothes. My son, I smiled, using a tissue to wipe the cookie crumbs from Anan's mouth. Come on, say Grandma. Gra, Anan mimicked indistinctly, his big eyes blinking. The book in Grandma Ruan's hand fell onto the bed with a thud. He can talk now. Only a few simple words. I patted Anan's head with some pride. This child learns quickly. Grandma Ruan was silent for a moment, then suddenly pulled out a thick red envelope from under her pillow and stuffed it firmly into Anan's little pocket. This won't do. I quickly stopped her. Grandma Ruan, please don't. It's for the child, not for you. She glared at me, then softened her tone. You've worked hard these past few days. Only then did I notice the exquisite embroidery on the inner cuffs of Grandma Ruan's hospital gown. Clearly expensive at first glance. Grandma Ruan, where are your family members? Why haven't they come to visit you? I asked casually while changing Anan's diaper. The air in the ward suddenly froze. Grandma Ruan's expression turned cold. Dead. She spat out the 2 words stiffly. My hand paused as I realized I had asked a question I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. It's nothing. Grandma Ruan waved her hand, her gaze settling on the delicate embroidered flower on Anan's clothes. Did you embroider this, Just something I did for fun when I had free time, I replied casually. Grandma Ruan suddenly reached out to touch the flower. A flash of admiration in her eyes. The stitches are fine and even, the color scheme bold yet elegant. This is far from just something done for fun. I was somewhat surprised by her discernment. You understand embroidery? I know a little. She withdrew her hand and changed the subject. What about the child's father? I lowered my head to adjust Anan's clothes, my voice calm. There is no father. I had the child out of wedlock. I expected to see disdain or pity in her eyes, but Grandma Ruan simply nodded slightly. raising a child alone isn't easy, a simple sentence, yet it made my nose sting with emotion. In the following days, I took An into the hospital almost every day. Grandma Juan complained that we were annoying, but every time she saw An, the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes would soften. The most amazing thing was that An, who had always been shy around strangers, took an unusual liking to Grandma Juan. He would clumsily climb onto the old woman's sickbed, touch her face with his saliva-covered little hands, or stuff his favorite teething biscuits into her mouth. It's so gross. Grandma Juan would turn her face away in disgust each time. But the corners of her eyes and brows were filled with unconcealable delight. On the day of discharge, Grandma Juan invited me to her home for a visit. Last time, I rushed to save someone and only made it to the yard. But this time I finally got a proper look at the whole place. Pushing open the mottled wooden door, what came into view was a small courtyard neatly arranged. Several rose bushes were in full bloom, with patches of green vegetables planted in the corner. And a grapevine casting dappled shadows. "Come in," Grandma Juan said, leaning on her cane and motioning for me to follow her. As I pushed open the door to the main house, my eyes widened in surprise. The outwardly plain farmhouse held unexpected wonders within. The spacious and bright living room featured polished hardwood floors and a set of mahogany furniture that exuded understated elegance. Most striking was an entire wall of glass display cabinets, filled with an array of trophies, medals, and certificates. "This is," holding An, I approached, rendered speechless by the sight before me. The trophy was engraved with inscriptions such as Gold Award, National Traditional Craft Competition, and Inheritor of Intangible Cultural Heritage, with dates ranging from the 1980s to a decade ago. "Just something I did for fun in my spare time," Grandma Juan said casually, but I caught a fleeting glimpse of pride in her eyes. She took the babbling An into her arms and pointed to a photo frame at the very center of the display cabinet. "Look, that's Grandma when she was young." The woman in the photo appeared to be in her early 30s, dressed in an elegant cheongsam, holding an embroidery hoop, her eyes and brows radiating confidence and composure. You're an artist," I stammered. Grandma Juan chuckled lightly. "What artist? Just a teacher of embroidery, that's all." She told me she had once been a professor in the art department of a university, specializing in traditional embroidery, and had mentored many outstanding students. "But how did you end up?" I glanced around, unable to comprehend why such an accomplished person would live in seclusion in this remote mountain village. Grandma Juan's expression darkened. She held An and sat down on the rattan chair, remaining silent for a long while before speaking. "I have a daughter named Xiaoyu." Her fingers gently brushed over a yellowed photo in the album. The girl in the photo appeared to be about 17 or 18 years old. With her hair tied in a ponytail and a smile as radiant as the morning sun, she learned embroidery from me since childhood and was extremely talented. Grandma Juan's voice trembled slightly. At the age of 20, she went to participate in an international competition. But the plane, my heart suddenly tightened. After the accident, not even her remains were found. Grandma Juan's nails dug deeply into her palm. An seemed to sense the heaviness in the air and reached out her small hand to touch Grandma Juan's face, murmuring indistinctly, "Grandma." Grandma Juan buried her face in Anan's soft little body, her shoulders shaking slightly. I stood by, unsure of how to comfort her. "A few years ago, my husband passed away too, and I felt even more meaningless. So I sold the house in the city and moved here." Grandma Juan looked up, her eyes red, thinking I'd just find a quiet country house to pass away alone. Only then did I understand why she had been so hostile when we first met. A stranger suddenly intruding into her closed world, disrupting her peace. "Grandma Juan." I crouched down and took her wrinkled hand in mine. "Enough about those old, stale matters, let's not bring them up again." Grandma Juan waved her hand and suddenly changed the subject. "Who taught you that embroidery skill of yours?" I briefly recounted my experience, naturally omitting the part about transmigrating into a book. After listening, Grandma Juan nodded thoughtfully. "The technique follows the orthodox Sioux embroidery style, but the composition and color palette have a modern touch, quite rare." She stood up and walked into the inner room, returning moments later with an exquisite sandalwood box. "Here. This is for you." Inside the box was a set of pure silver embroidery needles, their ends adorned with tiny pearls that shimmered softly in the sunlight. "This is too precious," I quickly declined. "At my place, they'd just gather dust," Grandma Juan insisted. firmly tucking the box into my bag. Consider it a thank you for taking care of me all this time. She paused, then added, also, bring it in to me every Wednesday afternoon from now on. I'll teach you a few lost needle techniques. I froze for a moment, then felt my eyes grow hot. This meant she was going to take me as her disciple. Grandma Juan, none of that sniveling. She frowned in disapproval, yet reached out to wipe the tears from the corner of my eye. Remember, Wednesday afternoon. Come on time, be late even once, and don't bother coming back. And so, I became Grandma Juan's last disciple. Every Wednesday afternoon, I would take an into her house for study sessions. Grandma Juan was extremely strict in her teaching. Even a single crooked stitch had to be undone and redone. Embroidery is like being a person. Every stitch must be worthy of your conscience, she always said. Under her guidance, my skills improved by leaps and bounds. Those nearly lost embroidery techniques, adding flowers to brocade, hidden fragrance floating, golden dragons coiling, each one regained its brilliance in my hands. The audience in the live stream grew larger, and orders were scheduled 6 months in advance. Once, I embroidered a piece titled Pine and Crane, symbolizing longevity. Using the thousands of strands technique taught by Grandma Juan, the crane's feathers could display different hues under the light. This artwork was purchased by a collector for a high price of 100,000 yuan. You've made it. Grandma Juan rarely praised me when she found out. That night, I announced in the live stream that I would be taking a temporary break from broadcasting. Why? No way. Watching Nguyen's embroidery is my most relaxing time every day. Did someone bully you? The barrage was filled with wails, I explained with a smile. I need to prepare for the National Traditional Crafts Competition and focus on creating my entry. This is Grandma Juan's suggestion. With your skill level, winning a gold medal shouldn't be a problem, she said, her eyes sparkling with a long-lost brilliance. Let those old folks see that traditional embroidery isn't dead yet. The competition theme I chose is rebirth. On the design sketch, a phoenix rises from the flames, with each feather rendered using different stitching techniques. I innovatively incorporated gold threads and red coral beads into the flame section, making it shimmer under the light as the angle changes. The creative process was exceptionally arduous. I often worked until dawn, my eyes sore to the point of tears, and An seemed to understand that her mother was busy, behaving unusually well. He would quietly sit at my feet playing with building blocks, or lie on Grandma Juan's lap listening to her tell stories. 3 months later, new life was finally completed. As the last stitch was made, Grandma Juan stared at the piece for a long time, her eyes suddenly reddening. See, you once embroidered a phoenix too, she said softly. Not as good as yours. The day I submitted my work for the competition, a heavy rain poured down in Qingshan village. Grandma Juan stood under the eaves, gazing at the torrential rain and murmuring to herself, a phoenix rises from the ashes and thrives in water. What a good omen. The competition results wouldn't be announced for another 2 months. I resumed my live streams but cut back on taking orders, dedicating more time to honing my skills. Grandma Juan's health fluctuated, so I visited her almost every day with An. Sometimes we would study the lost needle techniques recorded in ancient texts together, and other times we would simply sit quietly drinking tea, watching An chase butterflies in the yard. One ordinary afternoon, as I was helping Grandma Juan sort through her collection of vintage embroidery pieces, my phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. May I speak to Ms. Sun Wan? The voice on the other end was serious. This is the organizing committee of the National Traditional Crafts Competition. My heart leaped into my throat. Your work Rebirth has won the grand prize in the competition. The organizing committee would like to invite you to attend the awards ceremony next Saturday. After hanging up the phone, my entire body was trembling. Grandma Juan guessed everything from my expression and patted my shoulder. Go, show Xiaoyu just how outstanding her junior sister is. The awards ceremony was held at the Provincial Art Gallery. I wore the pale San Chong Sam gifted to me by Grandma Juan, pinned up my long hair, and sat nervously in the audience. When the host announced the grand prize winner, I practically floated onto the stage. This piece perfectly blends traditional techniques with modern aesthetics, with every stitch and thread brimming with vitality. The jury chair's speech moved me to tears. The flashes of cameras rose and fell in the audience, and in my days, I seemed to see Grandma Juan's proud smile. After receiving the award, I had just stepped off the stage when a middle-aged man in a crisp suit stopped me. "Hello Ms. Su. I'm Zhou Ming from the Tianshu Group." He handed over his business card. "We're very interested in your work and would like to discuss potential collaboration." Tianshu Group, isn't that? I suppressed the shock in my heart. Tianshu Group was the cultural industry company the male lead belonged to. Is the plotline coming for me again? Sorry, I don't have any intention to collaborate for now. I politely declined and quickly walked away. Back in Qingshan village, I handed the golden trophy to Grandma Ruan. "This is all thanks to you," I said sincerely. Grandma Ruan caressed the trophy and shook her head. "No, this is all your own doing." That night, we made an exception and had a little wine. With her cheeks flushed, Grandma Ruan suddenly said, "Muan, I have an idea. Would you be willing to formally become my apprentice?" I was stunned for a moment, then immediately knelt down to perform the apprenticeship ceremony. "Master above, accept this disciple's bow." Grandma Ruan helped me up, tears glistening in her eyes. Good. In this lifetime of mine, Ruan Qinghe, I have not lived in vain after all." That day, as usual, I took Anan to Grandma Ruan's house. Just as we reached the courtyard gate, we heard the sound of a fierce argument inside, accompanied by the sharp shattering of porcelain hitting the ground. "Ruan Qinghe, how much longer are you going to be this stubborn?" A robust male voice roared angrily. "The inheritors of Xiaoyi are dwindling by the day. Are you really going to stand by and watch it vanish? Damn old man, my affairs are none of your business." Grandma Ruan's voice was sharper than usual. "Get out, don't bother me." My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly hurried into the courtyard with Anan in my arms. I saw a well-dressed elderly man, his face flushed with anger, clutching a blue and white porcelain teacup in his hand as if he were about to hurl it to the ground at any moment. Grandma Ruan stood on the steps, hands on her hips, her gaze as sharp as a knife. "Master," I called softly. Both of them turned their heads at the same time, the moment the old man saw Anan in my arms. His pupils constricted sharply, and the teacup in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter, shattering into pieces. This is," his voice trembled slightly, his gaze fixed intently on Anan's face. "Your child." I instinctively held Anan tighter and nodded. The old man staggered back half a step as if struck by lightning, murmuring, so alike, little one." How old are you?" he asked in a kindly voice. Anan blinked her big eyes and answered in a sweet, childish voice. 2 years old. "How adorable." The old man beamed with joy, pulling out an exquisite pocket watch from his pocket and handing it to Anan. "Here, Grandpa has a little gift for you." Anan took it curiously, clumsily fiddling with the watch cover with her tiny hands, and giggled happily. "So shiny." Grandma Ruan snorted coldly. "Zhou Xiaoquan, if you're so fond of children, go persuade your unmarried youngest son to get married and have one of his own. Don't go coveting my precious grandson here." Old Mr. Zhou, having been struck on a sore spot, immediately stood up in anger. "Ruan Qinghe, you, what about me?" Grandma Ruan sneered. "Get out of here, don't be an eyesore." Old Mr. Zhou was so furious his beard trembled. Finally, he flung his sleeve violently. "Fine, I'll go, but let me tell you, I've rented a house in this village, and I'll be coming every day from now on. Let's see who outlasts who." With that, he turned and strode away. Only when his figure completely disappeared did I finally relax, turning to look at Granny Ruan. "Master, who was that?" Granny Ruan sighed and pulled me to sit down in the courtyard. "His name is Zhou Xiaoquan, an old family friend of mine. You could say we grew up together as childhood sweethearts. Later, he went into business and started a company, which has now grown quite large." I nodded. "He mentioned something about inheritance just now." "Humph. That old fool has too much time on his hands." Granny Ruan scoffed. "Now that his company is big, he's suddenly nostalgic for traditional crafts, insisting on dragging me out of retirement for some intangible cultural heritage inheritance project. At my age, I don't have the energy for such nonsense." She paused, suddenly looking at me with a serious expression. "But Nuanyuan, I think you can." I was taken aback. "Me, yes." Grandma Ruan patted my hand. "Your talent is no worse than mine was back then, and you're also innovative. If you could collaborate with old Zhou, you might really be able to bring embroidery back to life." I looked down at Anan, who was engrossed in playing with the pocket watch given by old Mr. Zhou, his little face full of curiosity. "But Anan is still young. I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" Grandma Ruan cut me off. "Old Zhou may be stubborn, but he's not a bad person. Trust your master, your future is boundless." When Grandpa Zhou heard I was Grandma Ruan's last disciple, his eyes widened as he looked me up and down like I was some rare treasure. Old Ruan, is this your new apprentice? He circled around me and then suddenly slapped his thigh. I knew your outfit looked familiar. Aren't you that girl who does embroidery live streams online? I nodded in surprise. Wow, I'm actually your biggest fan, Grandpa Zhou exclaimed excitedly like a child, pulling out his phone and swiping a few times. Look. I watch your live stream replays every day. On the screen was clearly the interface of my live streaming room, with the ID still Jiangnan Embroideress. I remembered this ID, it often interacted with me. I just never expected it to be Grandpa Zhou. Grandma Ruan sneered from the side. Old man, you're putting on quite the act. Who's acting? Grandpa Zhou retorted indignantly, pointing at and little Anin here. Even though it's just a glimpse of his back, I felt an instant connection. I adored him at first sight, and now that I see him in person, I love him even more. Hearing his name, Anin looked up and grinned at Grandpa Zhou, revealing a few tiny white teeth. Grandpa Zhou's heart melted instantly. He crouched down to play with Anin. Call me Grandpa, won't you? Grandpa will buy you candy, Grandpa, Anin called out crisply, making Grandpa Zhou's beard twitch with delight. Good child. He scooped Anin up in his arms, then turned to me with a serious expression. Xiao Su, on behalf of the Tianshu Group, I formally invite you to join our Intangible Cultural Heritage Preservation Project. The compensation will be excellent. Tianshu Group. My heart tightened. Grandpa Zhou, are you with the Tianshu Group? Oh, I'm the chairman. But I've mostly handed things over to my youngest son now, he replied casually, his attention entirely focused on playing with Anin. Come on, call me Grandpa one more time. My fingers unconsciously tightened around the hem of my clothes. The chairman of Tianshu Group, isn't that the grandfather of the male lead, Gu Chenzhou? After all this circling around, I still couldn't escape the original plotline. Grandma Ruan keenly noticed my unusual behavior and waved to Grandpa Zhou. Old Zhou, you go back first, we'll talk about this another day. Though reluctant, Grandpa Zhou returned Anin to me before leaving, turning back every few steps. Xiao Su, think it over carefully, the gates of Tianshu will always be open for you. After Grandpa Zhou had gone some distance, Grandma Ruan took me to sit in the courtyard. Muan, do you know Old Zhou? I shook my head, hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest. Master, actually, I have a somewhat troubled past. Under the osmanthus tree, I recounted the original host's story to Grandma Ruan in detail. Truth be told, the original host wasn't truly malicious. Many of her actions stemmed from feeling her territory was being invaded by the female lead and her mother, having lost her mother at a young age and neglected by her father. The original host instinctively shielded herself or resorted to extreme behaviors. Even the act of drugging was done under deception, and in the end, she drank the juice herself, proving that deep down, she never truly wanted to harm others. So you see, if I join the Celestial Book Group, I might run into some old acquaintances from the past. I forced a bitter smile and gently touched Anin's little face. I don't want Anin to get caught up in all that mess. Grandma Ruan listened quietly, then suddenly asked, Nuan, do you hate your father? I was taken aback for a moment, carefully sifting through the original host's memories. I'd be lying if I said I didn't, but it's more like heartbreak, since he was my only family. Do you hate your stepmother and stepsister then? I shook my head. Actually, when I think about it carefully, they haven't done anything unforgivable. It's me, being too sensitive, always feeling like they stole Dad's love. Grandma Ruan nodded, her gaze kind. Child, the fact that you can think this way shows you've grown up. To err is human, isn't it? What matters is the ability to correct one's mistakes. She gently held my hand. Running away won't solve the problem. Now that you have Anin, you should live with dignity and integrity. As long as your heart is at peace, you'll have nothing to fear wherever you go. I lowered my head to look at Anin in my arms. The little one had fallen asleep at some point, her long eyelashes casting two shadows on her face, her small mouth slightly pouted, like an angel. Yes, for Anin's sake, I should face these things bravely too. Master, I understand. I raised my head, my gaze firm. I will accept Grandpa Zhou's invitation. Grandma Ruan smiled with relief. That's more like it. Remember, no matter what happens, your master will always be your support. Back home, I sent a message to Grandpa Zhou, expressing my willingness to discuss the collaboration in detail. Putting down my phone, I gently placed Anin in his little bed and tucked him in. Moonlight streamed through the gaps in the curtains, casting a soft silver glow on Anand's little face. I leaned down and planted a kiss on his forehead. Sweetheart, Mommy will protect you. Early the next morning, Grandpa Joe arrived excitedly at the door, bringing along a pile of toys and snacks. These are all for Anan, he beamed, his smile so wide his eyes nearly disappeared. Xiao Su, take a look at this contract. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, just say so. I took the thick stack of documents and began carefully reviewing them. The terms were surprisingly generous: an annual salary of $1 million, social insurance and housing fund, 2 paid vacations per year, and even special childcare subsidies. What surprised me the most was the additional clause: I could continue to operate my personal account, and the company would not interfere with my creative freedom. This is too generous. I was somewhat overwhelmed by the favor. Grandpa Joe waved his hand dismissively. With your talent, you're worth it. Our Tian Shu is eager for talent. After signing the contract, Grandpa Joe leaned in mysteriously. Xiao Su, the company has an important event next month, and I hope you can attend. My youngest son and grandson will be there. It'll be a good chance to introduce you. My heart skipped a beat. Could the grandson he mentioned be the male lead? Gu Chenzhou. Grandpa Joe, your grandson is, oh, his name is Gu Chenzhou. Taking his mother's surname, Grandpa Joe explained, that boy is now managing all the entertainment and media projects under the company. He's quite capable, already married, well-behaved, and never gives anyone any trouble. It really was him. I forced a calm smile and said, all right, I'll definitely meet them when I have the chance. After seeing Grandpa Joe off, I sat in the yard, lost in thought. Sunlight filtered through the branches and leaves of the osmanthus tree, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The gears of fate seemed to start turning once again. After joining the Celestial Book Group, I was assigned to the Intangible Cultural Heritage Department, responsible for the inheritance and innovation of embroidery techniques. To avoid drawing attention, I followed a strict daily routine, clocking in and out on time, and rarely participated in any social activities beyond necessary meetings and events. My office was located in a quiet and secluded corner of the company building, perfect for focused creative work. However, what was meant to come eventually couldn't be avoided. That day, the company hosted a grand intangible cultural heritage exhibition, and as a newly recognized embroidery inheritor, I had to attend. I chose a low-key navy blue qipao, tied up my long hair, and applied light makeup to ensure I wouldn't stand out too much. The exhibition venue was bustling with crowds, with media representatives and industry leaders gathered together. Standing in front of my booth, I introduced my works to interested visitors, trying to maintain a smile while feeling tense inside. Suddenly, the crowd stirred, and I looked up. Grandpa Joe was walking toward us, accompanied by 2 men. One appeared to be around 30 years old, dressed in a sharp suit, with features as refined as a painting, exuding an aura of quiet authority. The other was much younger, his delicate features as if carved, his gaze cold and distant. None other than the male lead of the original story, Gu Chenzhou. My heart raced instantly, and my fingers unconsciously tightened around the hem of my clothes. Grandpa Joe approached me with a beaming smile and enthusiastically introduced me to the 2 men. Jibai, Chenzhou, this is Sun Wan, the one I've mentioned to you, Master Rawan's last apprentice, exceptionally skilled in embroidery. Gu Chenzhou's gaze fell on my face, his previously calm eyes suddenly turning cold, flashing with a trace of disgust. His thin lips pressed together slightly. Clearly recognizing me, Miss Su, he said with detachment, not even bothering to offer a handshake before turning to Grandpa Joe. Grandpa, President Wang is still waiting for us. Let's go. Grandpa Joe seemed displeased. What's the hurry? Nuan is, Gu Chenzhou calmly interrupted. Company matters are more important. With that, he subtly took Grandpa Joe's arm and guided him away from my booth without drawing attention. I breathed a sigh of relief and was about to lower my head to tidy the display when I noticed Joe Jibai hadn't left with them. He was Grandpa Joe's son, born in his later years and the actual power holder of the conglomerate. I'd heard many stories about him from the staff. Right now, he's standing right beside me, hands in his pockets, his gaze thoughtfully fixed on me. That look was light, yet somehow it made me feel an inexplicable sense of pressure. I forced myself to stay composed, continuing to arrange the embroidery as if I hadn't noticed him. However, he suddenly spoke, his voice low. So you're the embroidery master my father personally hired? I nodded, not daring to look up and meet his gaze. "You flatter me, Mr. Zhou." He let out a light scoff, seemingly dismissive. "I heard your skills are quite good." I pursed my lips, unsure whether his words were praise or criticism, and could only reply cautiously, "I'm still learning." He stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly smiled in a way that was hard to read. "I hope you truly are as promising as my father claims." With that, he turned and left, his back as straight as a pine tree, his aura so formidable that no one dared to approach. I frowned slightly. Feeling puzzled, I was certain I hadn't provoked him, so why did he seem hostile toward me? But someone like Zhou Jibai, with his deep, inscrutable thoughts and emotions hidden behind an unreadable facade, was far beyond my ability to understand. All I wanted was to work peacefully and take care of Anin, without getting involved in any trouble. It's better to stay away from this kind of person. At the group meeting, Manager Chen from the finance department was enthusiastically presenting the quarterly budget reduction plan. The annual investment in intangible cultural heritage projects is too high, but the market return rate is not impressive. He adjusted his glasses and spoke in a casual tone. "Nowadays, crafts like embroidery, ceramics, and wood carving can be entirely replaced by mechanized production, lower cost, higher efficiency. Preserving these traditional projects, when it comes down to it, is just a matter of sentiment." Sitting in the back row, I unconsciously tightened my grip on the folder. Sentiment, in his eyes, those works embodying the painstaking efforts of countless artisans, those skills carrying millennia of culture. Are they merely sentiment? I took a deep breath and stood up directly. "Manager Chen, I disagree with your viewpoint." The meeting room fell silent instantly, with everyone's gaze turning toward me. Manager Chen frowned, clearly not expecting anyone to contradict him on the spot. "Oh, what brilliant insight does Supervisor Su have to offer?" His tone carried a hint of sarcasm. I looked him straight in the eye and said word by word, "No matter how precise mechanized production is, it lacks one thing: human touch. Every stitch and every cut carries the craftsman's heart and soul. Machines can replicate patterns, but they cannot duplicate the creator's warmth or those subtle emotional expressions. The reason Tian Shu Group has been able to establish itself in the cultural industry has never been through cold assembly lines, but through respect for people." My voice wasn't loud, but each word was clear. Manager Chen's expression darkened slightly, and he immediately retorted, "What the market demands is efficiency and profit, not some elusive warmth." "Then why do you think our high-end custom embroidery pieces can fetch sky-high prices?" I retorted. "Precisely because they are one of a kind, because they carry a soul that cannot be replicated." The meeting room fell silent, everyone holding their breath as they watched the debate unfold. In the end, all eyes turned to Zhou Jibai, seated at the head of the table. His fingers lightly tapped the table, his expression indifferent, revealing neither joy nor anger. After a long pause, he spoke. "Supervisor Su is right." Manager Chen's expression stiffened. Zhou Jibai raised his eyes, his sharp gaze sweeping over. "Tian Shu Group has never relied on cheap replicas to establish itself. The inheritance of intangible cultural heritage is our foundation, not some disposable sentiment that can be casually discarded." Manager Chen, "If all you can see are cold numbers, perhaps you'd be better off working at a machinery factory." Manager Chen's face turned alternately pale and flushed, before he finally lowered his head. "Yes, President Zhou." My tense nerves finally relaxed, and I glanced at Zhou Jibai with gratitude. His gaze swept indifferently across my face without a word. As soon as I returned to my office after the meeting, the internal phone rang. "Manager Su, President Zhou wants to see you in his office." My heart skipped a beat, wondering why he wanted to see me. Was my earlier statement too reckless? With a nervous heart, I knocked on the door of the CEO's office. "Come in," a deep voice sounded from inside, pushing the door open. I saw Zhou Jibai seated behind a spacious desk, flipping through a document in his hand. "Mr. Zhou, you wanted to see me." I stood at the doorway and asked cautiously. He looked up and gestured for me to sit down. "You spoke very well in the meeting just now." I was taken aback, not expecting him to praise me directly. "Thank you, President Zhou." He closed the file and looked straight at me. "However, debate alone isn't enough, since you believe intangible cultural heritage has value. How do you plan to make it truly recognized by the market?" I took a deep breath and answered earnestly. "I want to create a promotion plan for intangible cultural heritage plus modern life, for example, integrating traditional embroidery into haute couture, home design, or even combining it with tech products to help young people appreciate its charm. At the same time, we can set up offline workshops to invite the public to try it themselves, letting them understand the challenges faced by artisans. The more I spoke, the more engaged I became, even pulling out my phone to show him the data from my live streaming channel. You see, many people are actually interested in traditional culture, they just lack opportunities to engage with it. Zhou Jibai listened quietly, his gaze resting on my phone screen before slowly returning to my face. After a long pause, the corners of his lips lifted slightly, revealing a faint smile. Interesting. I froze. This was the first time he had shown such obvious appreciation toward me. You will personally oversee this project. His slender fingers tapped lightly on the desk. Report directly to me. My heart skipped a beat. Report directly to him. This meant I was bypassing several layers of management. President Zhou, this, what? No confidence. He raised an eyebrow. I immediately shook my head. No, I have confidence, he nodded, his gaze profound. Then prove it to me. In the days that followed, I gradually became so busy I barely had time to catch my breath, planning, designing, and promoting the intangible cultural heritage projects. Each required my personal involvement. Often, Anin was still asleep when I left in the morning and already asleep again by the time I returned at night. Zhou Jibai turned out to be an unexpectedly reliable partner. On the surface, he appears to be a cold and shrewd businessman, but whenever the topic of protecting and preserving traditional culture comes up, a rare spark of passion always flickers in his eyes. This proposal won't work. In the meeting room, he pushed the plan back to me, his slender finger tapping on a specific figure. The budget is too high, and the return cycle is too long. Just as I was about to explain, he suddenly changed the subject, but the direction is right. For traditional craftsmanship to survive, it can't rely solely on nostalgia. With that, he picked up a pen and quickly wrote down a series of numbers on the paper. Go to the finance department and tell them I approved it. Also, you'll accompany me to the International Cultural Exchange next month. I looked up in surprise, meeting his deep gaze. Thank you, President Zhou, I said softly. He gave a slight nod, and as he stood to leave, his sleeve brushed against my notebook, carrying a faint scent of sandalwood. As the project progressed, my interactions with Zhou Jibai became increasingly frequent. Every time I report on work, he can pinpoint the issues with precision. When facing difficulties, he quietly helps me clear the obstacles. Under his sustainable management, the group's lifespan has been extended indefinitely. Because I was too busy, the time I spent with Anin became less and less, so I decided to apply for a small office to bring my child to work. Grandpa Zhou, upon hearing that I wanted to bring my child to work, immediately arranged a private office with a rest area for me without hesitation, and even had children's desks, chairs, and toy shelves specially set up. Little Anin coming to the company means this old man finally has a playmate, Grandpa Zhou said cheerfully. On the first day bringing Anin to work, I was so nervous my palms were sweating. I was afraid the little one wouldn't adjust well or might disturb my colleagues. But Anin turned out to be surprisingly well behaved. He sat quietly at the small table, drawing, occasionally looking up at me. Seeing that I was busy, he lowered his head and continued doodling. During the lunch break, Grandpa Zhou came over excitedly, bringing a large box of building blocks. Anin, how about building a castle with Grandpa? The old man and the little one sat on the carpet, playing happily. Their laughter passed through the glass door, drawing the attention of passing colleagues. I took the opportunity to handle a few documents, and the efficiency was remarkably high. Just like that, the days of bringing my child to work gradually settled into a routine. Anin quickly became the office's favorite. The ladies from the marketing department often brought homemade snacks to see him. The tech guys taught him to play programming mini-games. Even the usually stern HR director would show a rare smile upon seeing Anin. To avoid disturbing other colleagues, I established strict Anin rules. She could only move around in the office and her designated rest area, not run out freely, and certainly not interrupt others' work. That afternoon, I was rushing to complete an urgent proposal, fully focused on the computer screen. Mom, I need to use the bathroom. Anin tugged at my sleeve. Okay, Mom will take you, I said without looking up. Just 5 more minutes. Almost done. 5 minutes later, I saved the file and looked up, but Anin was nowhere in sight. Anin, I called out, but there was no response. My heart sank, and I quickly stood up to search for him. the lounge, the restroom, the children's area, everywhere he might have gone was empty. "Have you seen Anin?" I anxiously asked every colleague I encountered, only to receive shakes of the head in response. Cold sweat trickled down my back as terrifying thoughts flashed through my mind. I rushed into the security room, demanding to check the surveillance footage. The footage showed that 20 minutes ago, Anin had opened the office door herself, peeked around cautiously for a while, and then toddled out on her short little legs. My heart nearly stopped until I saw the next segment of the surveillance footage. Anin was wandering in the hallway when he happened to run into Zhou Jibai, who had just stepped out of the meeting room. Zhou Jibai rarely came to this floor, usually I was the one who went to his office to report on work. He hadn't met Anin before, so there shouldn't have been any reason for their paths to cross, but the tall man crouched down, seemingly asking Anin something, and then carried him away. I was puzzled. Why would President Zhou take Anin away? Following the surveillance prompt, I headed straight to the 32nd floor CEO's office. The door was slightly ajar, and from inside came Anin's giggling and Zhou Jibai's deep voice. "This isn't the right way to assemble it, you need to turn it the other way." I gently pushed the door open, and the scene before me left me frozen in place. The usually meticulous President Zhou now had his suit jacket casually draped over the chair back, his shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, sitting on the carpet with Anin building blocks together. The sharp lines of his profile had softened considerably, even carrying a rare hint of a smile. Anin, completely free from her usual restraint, had flushed cheeks and was excitedly pointing at the blueprint while chattering away. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting an almost unbelievably heartwarming scene around them. "Anin," I couldn't help but call out. Both of them looked up simultaneously. Anin cheered and rushed over. "Mommy, Uncle Zhou is teaching me how to build a big castle." Zhou Jibai stood up. A fleeting shadow of darkness crossed his face when he saw me, but he quickly regained his usual aloof demeanor. Only the colorful Lego pieces still clinging to his shirt seemed slightly out of place. "Is this your child?" he asked, his voice devoid of emotion. I held Anin's hand. "Yes." "How old is he?" 2.5 years old. I was a bit puzzled. Zhou Jibai never usually inquired about employees' personal matters. "Where's the child's father?" I pursed my lips, not wanting to invite too much gossip, and simply replied, "He's gone." His eyes flickered slightly, but he didn't press further. Instead, he bent down to pick up the scattered building blocks from the floor, his movements surprisingly gentle. Anin seemed to like him a lot. Even as I carried her away, she kept looking back at him with reluctant longing. In the days that followed, Zhou Jibai's visits to our office noticeably increased. Sometimes he'd bring imported fruits, other times educational toys. He seemed particularly fond of Anin, often staying for half a day at a time. I didn't understand why he acted this way, but I tried not to let it affect me and focused on my own work. That afternoon, I was organizing embroidery threads when the office door suddenly swung open. Grandpa Zhou walked in excitedly, only to see Zhou Jibai holding Anin. "Jibai, you've met Anin too?" Grandpa Zhou happily approached, beaming. "I've been wanting you to see this child." I was stunned for a long time when I first saw him. As he spoke, Grandpa Zhou took out his phone, opened the photo album, and pointed to a picture. "Look, this is Jibai at 3 years old. Doesn't he look just like Anin?" My gaze fell upon the yellowed photograph, and my breath caught in my throat. The little boy in the photo was wearing a sailor collar shirt, with chubby cheeks and large, grape-like dark eyes. Even the slight upward curve of his lips was identical to Anin's. If not for the dated feel of the photo and the fact that Anin had never worn such clothes, I would have sworn it was Anin himself. "This really does look like him," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Right," Grandpa Zhou said proudly. "The first time I saw Anin, I thought she looked familiar. Isn't she just like Jibai when he was little?" He then gave Zhou Jibai a meaningful look. "Since you like Anin so much, why not get married and have a child of your own? Wouldn't that be better?" Zhou Jibai remained Silent, only lifting Anin higher, making the little one giggle with delight. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on them. The two faces, one big, one small, were pressed close together, sharing the same eyes, the same contours. Even the slight downward curve at the corners when they smiled was identical. My heart suddenly raced as a terrifying thought surfaced in my mind. That night's banquet, since Gu Chenzhou attended, could Zhou Jibai also have been there? Could he be the man from back then? Memories came flooding back, before transmigrating into the book. I had a very alluring dream. In the dream, it was a dark room, with the man's rough movements, scorching breath, and that angry whisper, "Is this the result you wanted?" At the time, I thought it was just an absurd dream, but now I wonder. Could it have been a brief moment when I crossed over while the original host was experiencing that incident? My hands unconsciously tightened on the hem of my clothes. Grandpa Zhou was still chattering away about marriage, but Zhou Jibai suddenly looked up, his gaze fixed directly on me. Those deep eyes seemed capable of seeing through all my thoughts. I hurriedly lowered my head to organize the documents, not daring to meet his gaze. After Grandpa Zhou left, only the three of us remained in the office, and An was slumped over Zhou Jibai's shoulder, already drowsy. "I'll take him to the restroom," I said softly, reaching out to take the child. Zhou Jibai, however, slightly turned away to avoid my hand. "I'll do it." His arms held An steadily, his movements incredibly gentle, as if cradling some precious treasure. I stood by the window, looking at my reflection in the glass, my face as pale as paper. If Zhou Jibai is really An's father, what are you thinking about? A deep voice suddenly sounded behind me, startling me. As I turned around, I nearly bumped into his chest. Zhou Jibai had returned at some point and was now looking down at me from above, standing so close that I could catch the faint scent of sandalwood on him. Nothing. I took a step back, forcing myself to stay composed. "Thank you for taking care of An." His eyes flickered slightly. "He's very well behaved." Silence stretched between us. Summoning my courage, I looked up. "Mr. Zhou, did you attend the Gu family's charity gala 2 years ago?" His gaze suddenly turned cold. "Why are you asking this?" "Just asking casually." I lowered my head, my heart pounding like a drum. He stared at me for a few seconds, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Sun Wan." His voice was low and dangerous. "What if I said I have been there?" I held An in my arms, still pondering the events of that day. Zhou Jibai's answer was ambiguous, either admitting nor denying it, but my intuition grew stronger. He was definitely An's father, yet he didn't seem in a hurry to confirm it, only occasionally coming over to play with An, bringing him toys and picture books. Occasionally, he would casually bring me small gifts, a silk scarf, a box of tea, or even a limited edition set of embroidery needles. Seeing him like this, I simply let him be. We never married. And now that I have a stable income and financial security, he couldn't easily obtain custody of An. If all he wanted was to spend time with An, I wouldn't stop him. That day, Zhou Jibai took a group of company employees to the countryside for a charity event. As an ambassador for traditional craftsmanship, I was also part of the group. We arrived at a primary school in a remote mountain village. In the shabby classroom, the children gathered around us with curiosity, their eyes sparkling with a thirst for knowledge. "Teacher, how is this flower embroidered?" a little girl with pigtails asked me timidly. I crouched down and took out the embroidery hoop and needlework I always carried with me. "Come, let me teach you." The little girl had slender fingers and learned exceptionally fast. In just half an hour, she could already embroider a decent-looking little flower. "Teacher, I want to be an embroiderer when I grow up." She looked up with her small face, her eyes brimming with longing. My heart softened, and I taught her a few more simple stitches. Before I knew it, it was already late in the evening. By the time I packed up and left the classroom, the campus was completely empty, and the other staff had already left by bus. Only a black SUV was parked not far away, its window rolled down to reveal Zhou Jibai's sharply defined profile. "Get in," he said curtly. I had just fastened my seatbelt when the sky suddenly lit up with lightning and thunder, and raindrops as big as beans pounded against the windshield. The rain came so suddenly, I muttered under my breath. Zhou Jibai turned on the wipers, frowning slightly. "The mountain road won't be easy to navigate." Just as the car left the village entrance, an old man wearing a straw raincoat stopped us. "Don't go any further." The old man banged on the car window and shouted, "There's a landslide ahead, it's dangerous." Zhou Jibai rolled down the window, and the rain immediately soaked his sleeve. "Mr. Zhou, the village chief says you should stay the night first." The old man pointed to a house not far away. "That's the village chief's home. Everything's been arranged." We dashed through the rain into the village chief's house. The simple farmhouse courtyard was neatly kept, and steaming hot dishes were laid out in the main room. The village chief's family warmly welcomed us. "President Zhou, we happen to have one spare room left at home. You can stay there for now." Zhou Jibai immediately said, "Only one room? Then I can stay at another villager's house." The village chief looked at us in confusion. Why do you two, as a married couple, want to stay separately? I hurriedly explained, you've misunderstood, we're not. I saw your phone wallpapers, the village chief interrupted with a chuckle. It's a very cute little baby, and the baby looks just like your husband, isn't it yours? I froze, instinctively turning to look at Zhou Jibai. He was pulling out his phone to check messages, and on the screen was clearly Annan's photo. The little one wearing a bear onesie, beaming at the camera with a radiant smile. My heart skipped a beat, so he had also set Annan as his wallpaper. Zhou Jibai put away his phone and thanked the village chief politely. Then I'll trouble you. The room arranged for us by the village chief was simple but very tidy. There was a double bed, a small wardrobe, and a desk by the window. Zhou Jibai took a quilt from the cabinet and, without a word, began making a bed on the floor. Throughout the entire process, he was proper and didn't show the slightest hint of impropriety. Seeing this, I stopped being overly sensitive. After a quick wash, I prepared to rest. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking came from the door. The village chief's wife came in carrying a stack of clothes. I noticed your clothes are all wet. These are my son's old clothes. If you don't mind, you can make do with them for the night. I gratefully accepted them, though the clothes were a bit old. They were washed clean and carried the scent of sunlight. When Zhou Jibai came out of the bathroom after changing, I almost didn't recognize him. He stood by the window in a simple white t-shirt, tall and long-legged, drying his hair. When he turned his face slightly, the dim yellow light cast a soft glow over his deep-set eyes and brows. Those usually sharp phoenix eyes were now half-lowered, their thick lashes casting shadows beneath them, softening the usual sharpness. He looked like a senior from a university campus, completely devoid of the decisive, commanding presence he had in the business world. What's wrong? He noticed my gaze. Nothing, I averted my gaze. It's just the first time I've seen you dressed so casually. He chuckled softly, walking over to the futon and sitting down. No need to be so formal in private, just call me by my name. At this moment, Zhou Jibai felt both unfamiliar and familiar. Lying in bed, listening to his steady breathing, my thoughts were in turmoil. The rain showed no sign of stopping, with bean-sized droplets pounding on the roof tiles, creating a continuous crackling sound. We've been trapped in this small mountain village for 3 days now, with intermittent phone signals cutting us off from the outside world. These past few days, I've seen another side of Zhou Jibai. He would squat earnestly in front of the stove learning to tend the fire. Refusing to give up even when the smoke made him cough relentlessly, he would patiently teach the village children to read, his gentle demeanor a stark contrast to the decisive CEO in the business world. He even climbed onto a leaky roof without hesitation to help repair it when he learned about an elderly villager's plight. The village loudspeaker was repeatedly broadcasting flood prevention notices, with the faint sound of rushing water in the distance. Aunt Gue deftly added a bundle of firewood to the stove, the flames illuminating her wrinkled face. If this rain keeps up, the riverbank might not hold. I was just adding noodles to the pot when her words made my heart tighten. Is it that serious? Indeed, Aunt Gue sighed. 2 years ago, the flood washed away several houses. As they were speaking, noisy footsteps came from the courtyard. Zhou Jibai and the village chief rushed in, completely drenched, their trouser legs covered in mud. The situation at the dam isn't good. Zhou Jibai took off his bamboo hat, water droplets trickling down his hair. We need to organize the villagers to reinforce it. His white t-shirt clung damply to his body, outlining his firm muscle lines. I quickly handed him a dry towel. Dry yourself first, don't catch a cold. As he took the towel, his fingertips brushed against the back of my hand, carrying the coolness of the rain. Thank you, he said softly, his gaze resting on my cheeks, flushed red from the stove fire. Aunt Gue brought over a steaming bowl of ginger soup. Drink some to warm yourself up. Zhou Jibai took the bowl and suddenly noticed me dropping noodles into the boiling pot. He frowned slightly. Be careful, it's hot. No sooner had he spoken than I accidentally splashed scalding water on my wrist, instantly turning it red. Tisk, I gasped sharply, sucking in a breath. Zhou Jibai rushed over almost instantly, grabbing my wrist and pulling me to the water vat. He scooped up a ladle of cold water and poured it over my hand. How could you be so careless? His voice was low, carrying a hint of reproach yet laced with concern. The icy water washed over the burning skin as his slender fingers gently cradled my wrist, his movements careful and deliberate, as if handling something fragile. The village chief chuckled from the side, teasing, "Mr. Zhou, are you worried about your wife? You rushed over without even putting down your tools." Only then did I notice that Zhou Jibai was still holding a shovel in his other hand, making my cheeks flush with warmth. Zhou Jibai's ears turned slightly red. But he didn't refute the village chief's words. Instead, he focused on examining my wound, saying, "It's not too bad, Aunt Gue. Do you have any burn ointment?" Aunt Gue handed over the ointment, and Zhou Jibai gently applied it to my wrist after taking it. His fingertips carried a slight roughness from calluses, yet his movements were exceptionally gentle. The cool sensation of the ointment mixed with the warmth of his touch made my heartbeat quicken involuntarily. "All done," he said, releasing my hand, his voice slightly hoarse. "Be more careful next time, MHM." I responded with my head lowered, not daring to look at him. The room fell into silence, with only the crackling sound of firewood burning in the stove. The village chief looked at me, then at Zhou Jibai, and suddenly burst into laughter. "Ah, youth is wonderful." Aunt Gue also smiled faintly as she added some greens to the pot. All right, hurry up and eat, after dinner. We still need to go guard the embankment." After dinner, the rain eased slightly, but the water level continued to rise. Zhou Jibai and the young men of the village took turns keeping watch on the embankment. I followed Aunt Gue and the other women in filling sandbags, ready to reinforce the embankment at any moment. In the early hours of the morning, a sharp whistle suddenly sounded in the distance. "Oh no!" Aunt Gue's face changed color. Something must have gone wrong. We rushed to the riverbank in the rain, only to see that a section of the embankment had already been breached by the raging river. Zhou Jibai and several villagers were desperately stacking sandbags at the breach, but the current was too strong. The sandbags they had just placed were instantly swept away. "This won't work." Zhou Jibai wiped the rain from his face and shouted, "Someone needs to go down and drive in the stakes." The village chief stomped his feet anxiously. "It's too dangerous. The current is so strong, anyone who goes down will be swept away." Without another word, Zhou Jibai grabbed a thick hemp rope and tied it around his waist. "I'll go down." "No." I rushed forward and grabbed his arm. "It's too dangerous." He turned to look at me, raindrops dripping from his lashes, but his gaze was unusually firm. "Someone has to go down, or the entire village will be flooded." I opened my mouth but couldn't find any words to argue, so I just clenched his sleeve tightly. He gently pried my fingers loose. "Don't worry, I'm a strong swimmer." With the help of everyone, Zhou Jibai tied a rope around his waist, held a wooden stake, and stepped into the rushing river one step at a time. The water rose past his knees, then his waist, and finally reached his chest. Each step was incredibly difficult, yet he remained steady as he moved forward. My heart was in my throat, and I couldn't take my eyes off his retreating figure. "Be careful," someone suddenly shouted. A swift current rushed in, causing Zhou Jibai to stagger and nearly fall. I instinctively rushed forward, only to be yanked back by Aunt Gue. "Don't make things worse." Aunt Gue snapped sharply. Zhou Jibai steadied himself and pressed on. Finally, he reached the designated spot and began driving the wooden stake into the riverbed with all his might. One strike, two strikes, the stake gradually sank deeper, and his movements grew increasingly labored. After what felt like an eternity, he finally raised his thumb to signal success. The villagers immediately tightened the ropes and pulled him back to the shore. Zhou Jibai was soaked to the bone, his lips pale from the cold, yet he still remembered the next steps. Quick, pile up the sandbags." I couldn't hold back any longer and rushed forward, wrapping him in a dry towel. "Stop talking, go change your clothes first." He gave a weak smile and let me support him as we walked back at the village chief's house. I frantically found dry clothes and handed them to him. "Hurry and change, don't catch a cold." He took the clothes but didn't move immediately, instead staring intently at me. "Just now, were you really worried about me?" I turned my face away, not daring to meet his gaze. Who said I was worried about you? I was just afraid that if something happened to you, no one would pay me my salary." A low chuckle sounded by my ear. "You say one thing but mean another." By the time I turned back, he had already entered the bathroom. The sound of running water filled the air as I sat on the edge of the bed, my heartbeat still unsteady. Tonight's experience showed me a completely different Zhou Jibai, brave, responsible, gentle, a stark contrast to the cold and shrewd CEO in the business world. The bathroom door opened, and Zhou Jibai stepped out in dry clothes, his hair still dripping with water. I quickly stood up. "Let me help you dry your hair." The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted it. The gesture was far too intimate, yet he naturally sat on the edge of the bed and handed me the towel. Thanks for the trouble. Standing behind him, I carefully dried his damp hair. His hair was softer than expected, carrying a faint scent of shampoo. Through the strands, I could see a small black mole on the back of his neck, appearing and disappearing with his breath. Sunwon, he suddenly spoke, his voice very soft. He paused. Can I pursue you? My hand froze abruptly, and the towel fell to the ground. After a long moment, I shook my head. Zhou Jibai's shoulders visibly stiffened for an instant. He lowered his head slightly, his voice carrying a hint of disappointment I had never heard before. Is it not possible? The sound of rain outside the window suddenly became clearer, tapping against the roof tiles like countless tiny drumbeats. It's not that it's not possible, I said softly, my fingers unconsciously tightening around the hem of my clothes. It's that it's unnecessary. He suddenly looked up, those always inscrutable eyes now clearly reflecting my image. I'm willing to be with you. As I spoke these words, I felt something heavy silently slip away from my heart. Zhou Jibai's expression froze for a moment, then his eyes suddenly brightened like ignited stars, his Adam's apple bobbed, and uncharacteristically, his eyes grew slightly moist. The next second, he pulled me into a tight embrace. His embrace was warmer than I had imagined, carrying a faint scent of pine and the freshness of rain. I pressed against his chest, hearing his rapid and powerful heartbeat, thump thump thump, as if it were about to burst through his ribcage. I closed my eyes, feeling the strength in his arms, so tight yet so careful, as if holding a fragile treasure. At this moment, I suddenly realized how wonderful it feels to be cherished by someone like this. So much time has passed, and I am loved by more and more people. There's Grandma Ruan who treats me as her own, Auntie Zhang who dotes on me like a daughter, Grandpa Zhou who's always cheerful, little Anan who loves me unconditionally, and the man standing before me. I am no longer the helpless Sunwon who first arrived in this world. Amidst the sunrise and sunset of Qingshan village, in the meticulous embroidery stitches, and within Anan's innocent smiles, I found my true self. After we got together, Zhou Jibai treated me better and better. The Intangible Cultural Heritage Inheritance Project progressed smoothly under my leadership. Not only did he approve sufficient budgets, but he also personally connected me with multiple museums and cultural institutions both domestically and internationally. Today was the opening ceremony of the National Intangible Cultural Heritage Festival, and as a representative inheritor of embroidery craftsmanship, I took the stage to deliver a speech. Under the spotlight, I saw Zhou Jibai in the front row holding Anan, the little one, dressed in a tiny suit, sat upright with an utterly adorable seriousness. Zhou Jibai held Anan steadily with one hand while recording with his phone in the other. His usually stern features were softened beyond belief, his eyes brimming with pride. As my speech concluded, thunderous applause erupted. Anan suddenly broke free from Zhou Jibai's hand and shouted in her childish voice, "Mommy is the best." The room immediately erupted in warm laughter. We were getting along more and more harmoniously, but we never found the right opportunity to bring up what happened that night again. On this weekend day, Zhou Jibai drove Anan and me to visit Grandpa Zhou at the Zhou family's old residence. Throughout the journey, Anan excitedly pressed against the car window, chattering non-stop while pointing at the scenery along the roadside. Grandpa's house has big fishies. Anan waved her arms excitedly. Grandpa showed me last time. Zhou Jibai glanced at me through the rearview mirror, the corners of his lips lifting slightly. The old man keeps dozens of koi in the garden pond. Anan couldn't tear herself away last time. The Zhou family's ancestral home was nestled halfway up the hillside on the city outskirts. A quaint and elegant Chinese-style courtyard. As soon as we got out of the car, Grandpa Zhou came out to greet us, scooping up Anan who had rushed toward him, his smile so wide his eyes nearly disappeared. "Oh my dear little one, I've missed you so much, Grandpa." Seeing Zhou Jibai and me holding hands, Grandpa Zhou's eyes lit up. "You two are." Zhou Jibai tightened his grip on my hand. "Grandpa, Nguan and I are together now." Grandpa Zhou was so happy he kept slapping his thigh. "Wonderful. Wonderful. I always said you two were a perfect match." As soon as I stepped into the living room, I froze. Gu Qinzhou and Su Qing were sitting on the sofa drinking tea. This was the first time I had seen the female lead since arriving in this world. Su Qing was even more radiant and beautiful than described in the book. A light purple dress accentuated her snow-white skin, and when she smiled, The slight droop at the corners of her eyes made her appear especially warm and approachable. Su Qing stood up first. "Long time no see," I replied somewhat awkwardly. "Long time no see." To my surprise, Su Qing's attitude was natural and friendly, without any trace of the hostility described in the book. She even praised my embroidery work, saying she had seen my piece Rebirth at the museum and was deeply moved by it. Only then did Grandpa Zhou realize I was the heiress of the Su group. Stroking his beard in astonishment, "Su Yancheng is your father," I nodded. Feeling a hint of bitterness in my heart, since transmigrating into this world, I had never met this so-called father. During lunch, Su Qing happened to sit next to me. She carried herself with grace, spoke elegantly, and occasionally served Gu Qinzhou food. Their interactions were natural and sweet, just as the book described, truly a loving couple. Taking advantage of the others chatting, Su Qing suddenly whispered to me, "Sis, Dad misses you a lot." My chopsticks paused mid-air. "What?" "He often secretly checks your news and has collected all your interviews." Su Qing's voice was very soft. "He re-watched your TV interview more than 10 times last time." My heart suddenly clenched. This is completely different from the Su Yancheng I remember. That cold and indifferent father who would often scold the original host harshly. "How could he? He can't bring himself to reach out to you directly," Su Qing continued. "But every time I go back, he asks about how you're doing." She paused. "After all, you're the only blood relative he has left in this world, so, in places I didn't know about, he's been quietly keeping an eye on me all along." After dinner, while everyone else was chatting in the living room, I stepped out alone into the courtyard for some fresh air. The early summer breeze carried the fragrance of flowers, dispelling some of the lingering gloom. "Sister," Su Qing's voice came from behind. She handed me a cup of floral tea and sat down on the stone bench beside me. "I've actually always wanted to thank you in person," Su Qing said, gazing at the distant rockery and flowing water. "If it weren't for that glass of juice you gave me, I might never have understood Xinzhou's true feelings." My heart skipped a beat. That glass of juice, the one the original host had intended to drug her with, but ended up drinking herself by mistake that night. Was it Zhou Jibai? Finally asking the question I had been too afraid to voice, my voice trembled slightly. Su Qing blinked. "Yeah, didn't you know?" She wore a puzzled expression. "I thought you two had been together since then." My mind went completely blank, though I had suspected it. Hearing the confirmation still made my heart race. Uncle had just returned to the country at the time and was invited by Xinzhou to attend the banquet, Su Qing recalled. He drank quite a bit and left early to rest in the guest room. Later, she smiled awkwardly. In any case, the next day he was furious. Convinced someone had set him up, after Su Qing left, I sat alone in the courtyard, lost in thought. So it really was Zhou Jibai that night. So I truly experienced all of that firsthand. The familiar sound of footsteps approached from behind, and Zhou Jibai wrapped his arms around me from the back, resting his chin lightly on my shoulder. Finished talking, his breath brushed past my ear. I turned around and looked straight into his eyes. "It was you that night." This wasn't a question. Zhou Jibai's body visibly stiffened for a moment before he tightened his arms around me, burying his face in the crook of my neck and murmuring in a muffled voice, "I'm sorry. I thought you didn't want to remember that night, and I was rather rough at the time." His voice was full of guilt. "I was afraid you'd mind." I cupped his face in my hands. "Didn't you say something like, 'Is this the outcome you wanted?'" Zhou Jibai nodded, a flash of pain crossing his eyes. "I thought you'd drugged me on purpose to get close, so when we met again at the company later, He let out a bitter laugh. "I was such an asshole." "I see. No wonder he was initially so hostile toward me. No wonder he always looked at me with such complicated emotions." I held him tightly, burying my face in his chest. "I'm glad it's you." Zhou Jibai shuddered, then hugged me back even more fiercely. His heartbeat echoed through his chest, fast and heavy. "Nguan." His voice was slightly choked with emotion. "Thank you for giving me this chance to make up for my mistakes, to let me accompany Anan as she grows up." Encouraged by Zhou Jibai, I finally decided to go home and take a look. As the car slowly drove through the gates of the Su family villa, my palms were already damp with a thin layer of sweat. Zhou Jibai gently held my slightly trembling hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "Don't be afraid, I'm here with you." Pushing open that familiar yet unfamiliar door, the conversation in the living room came to an abrupt halt. My father, Su Yancheng, was sitting on the sofa, a cup of tea in his hand. The moment he saw me, his fingers visibly tightened, causing the tea in the cup to tremble slightly. I instinctively felt like crying. He was only in his early 50s, yet his hair was already completely white, and the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes were much deeper than I remembered. It was as if the very essence of his spirit had been drained from him. "You still remember to come back," he said, setting down his teacup. His voice was cold, but his gaze remained fixed on me, as if trying to take in every change in me over the years. Su Qing's mother immediately stood up to smooth things over. "It's good that Nuan is back. It's good that you're back. Come, sit down, I'll have the kitchen prepare a few more dishes." She warmly took my hand and led me toward the dining room. "Today, we specially made your favorite sweet and sour pork ribs and steamed sea bass." Throughout the meal, Su Qing's mother kept the atmosphere lively, and Zhou Jibai chimed in appropriately. Only Su Yancheng and I ate in silence, occasionally meeting each other's eyes before quickly looking away. After finishing the meal, he put down his chopsticks. "Nuanyuan, come to the study." The study remained unchanged, with books neatly arranged on the mahogany shelves, and the large solid wood desk was spotless. He took a file folder from the drawer and handed it to me. "Take a look." I opened the file folder. Inside was a share transfer agreement, 25% of the Su Group's shares. I looked up in shock, to think he originally only held 40% of the shares himself. This was nearly the majority of his wealth. "I'm getting old." He interrupted me, walking to the window with his back turned. "You're so outstanding now, I feel at ease handing the company over to you." His voice was slightly hoarse. "After all these years of focusing on business, it's time to enjoy some peace." I didn't take the document. Instead, I clutched it tightly, the paper making a faint rustling sound in my hand. After a long silence, I finally asked the question that had haunted the original owner of this body for a lifetime. "If given a chance to start over, would you be willing to spend more time with me?" The study was eerily quiet, with only the ticking of the antique clock on the wall breaking the silence. Father's figure looked particularly lonely in the sunlight, his shoulders trembling slightly. But he never answered. I took a deep breath and gently placed the contract on the table. "I'll leave first." Just as my hand touched the doorknob, a choked "I do" suddenly came from behind me. I turned around abruptly to see my father already in tears. This man who once dominated the business world was now crying like a child. "In this life, the one I've wronged the most is you." His voice was broken. "If given another chance, I would never leave you to grow up alone." My tears finally broke free and streamed down. Through my blurred, tear-filled eyes, I seemed to see the original host, Sun Wan, standing beside her father, gently embracing him. "Sun Wan, did you see it? Whether you're willing to forgive him or not, I wish you happiness and smooth sailing in your next life, with loving parents by your side." Zhou Jibai was waiting for me downstairs. Seeing me come down with red eyes, he immediately stepped forward and pulled me into his embrace. "All settled?" he asked softly. I nodded and looked up at Su Yancheng standing at the stairway. He was watching us, his eyes filled with relief and blessings. "I'll bring in to visit you in a few days." I mustered the courage to say, but I still couldn't bring myself to call him Dad. I couldn't forgive him on behalf of the original owner. Su Yancheng's eyes instantly lit up, and he nodded repeatedly. Good, good. I'll have someone tidy up the children's room." On the way back, I leaned against the car window, watching the city lights turn on one by one. Zhou Jibai held the steering wheel with one hand and tightly grasped mine with the other. Nuan, let's get married," he suddenly said. I turned to look at him. His profile appeared especially gentle under the glow of the streetlights. "Okay," I replied softly. He paused for a moment, then broke into a smile, so straightforward. I had a whole proposal speech prepared. I smiled too. Save those words for an inn to hear later. Under the night sky, our car headed home. There is an inn waiting for us, the warm glow of lights, and the future we weave together. And this time, neither of us will be alone anymore. End of main text. Su Yuan side story. My name is Su Yuan, and my nickname is Inin. I'm 5.5 years old and a mature and steady little boy. At least, that's how Mom praises me. But Dad, that would be Mr. Zhou Jibai, who always tries to poke my face with his stubble, clearly doesn't think so. Today, Dad mysteriously called me into his study, saying he wanted to teach me an essential skill for a real man. I rubbed my hands together excitedly, thinking he was going to teach me how to operate an excavator or shoot lasers like Ultraman. But then, he pulled out an embroidery needle. "Me," Dad said with a serious expression, "Anin." This is the adding flowers to brocade technique of Sue embroidery, your mother's specialty. Now, Dad will teach you. Me, Dad. Do you have some misunderstanding about what being a man means, Dad? Confidently. A real man can both earn money to support the family and embroider flowers while taking care of kids. Me, sighing, Dad, have you been brainwashed by Mom? Dad, pinching my cheek, this is called family harmony. Me, struggling, can I poke the monster with a needle then? Dad, thinking for a second, sure, but don't poke your sister, little grape. At night, Mom found Dad and me sneaking around in the study. She pushed the door open and saw Daddy was teaching me embroidery, and I ended up tangling all the thread around his head. Mom, trying not to laugh, Joe Jibai, are you cosplaying as a mummy? Dad, calmly, no, I'm cultivating Annan's patience and concentration. Me, raising hand, Mom. Daddy just pricked his finger with the needle and secretly went ow. Dad, glaring at me, little traitor. Mom, smiling, oh, so even President Joe has things he's not good at. Dad, defiantly, I was just testing how sharp the needle is. Me, adding salt to the wound, and ended up testing it on your own finger. Dad, in the end, Mom laughed so hard she couldn't straighten up, adding another black mark to Dad's history. The next day, little Grape, my sister, crawled over and grabbed Dad's embroidery hoop. Dad, nervously, little Grape, you can't play with this, little Grape, grinning, gurgle, and then, slap, the embroidery hoop was sent flying with a slap from her, all the threads scattering. Me, clapping, well done, little sister, now Dad won't have to embroider. Dad, face-palming, you too, were sent by the heavens to punish me, weren't you? Mom, sipping tea and watching the drama. Mr. Joe. Family harmony starts with taking care of kids and doing embroidery. Dad, at night, I had a serious talk with Dad. Dad, I think Ultraman is more powerful than an embroidery needle. Dad, raising an eyebrow. Oh, let's compare then. Me, pulling out a toy. Look, my Ultraman Tiga can glow. Dad, calmly taking out a needle. My embroidery needle can make your mom smile. Me, stunned, that actually makes some sense. Mom, suddenly appearing, Joe Jibai. Are you tricking our son again? Dad, innocent, I'm teaching him the philosophy of life. Me, concluding, so, Ultraman fights monsters, and embroidery needles appease Mom. Dad, thumbs up, smart. Mom, face-palming, you too, hopeless, Annan's little insight. Dad's embroidery needle equals Ultraman's ray, both can make Mom laugh. My little sister is a master at wrecking the house, but Dad doesn't dare scold her. A real man must know how to earn money, embroider, take care of kids, and also know how to pamper his wife.